One of the most common things our guest hears from people who are trying to grow their business, influence, or opportunities is, I feel like I'm just not meeting the right people. If you feel this way, you are in the right spot. No pun intended. You're also in the right spot if you've ever broken out in a cold sweat when doing outreach or networking, written an email, and then never sent it because outreach makes you so nauseous and imposter syndrome keeps you from hitting send. If you wished your outreach and connecting could be more effective and feel lighter, well, I have good news. This episode is quite possibly the unlock you've been looking for to get you in rooms and in front of people who you can really impact. Welcome to the Biz Doctor Podcast, my love letter to business owners the world over. I'm your host, Lauren Goldstein, award-winning business consultant and advisor fondly nicknamed the Biz Doctor by my clients. I help business owners who are burning the candle at both ends diagnose what is actually keeping them buried in the day-to-day busy work, and then formulate a treatment plan to adjust their business and team to fit them, so they can take a breath and a vacation and have more fun making a bigger impact than ever. So grab your favorite beverage and your earbuds, and let's dive into our latest episode. Without further ado, I am so excited to be back in the studio with the redoubtable Michael Roderick. The last time we had you on the show was back in November 2023, if you can believe it. And so much has changed since then, including the creation of your triple threat framework, the scientist, the celebrity, and the magician, which we will dive into a little later in the show. But welcome back, Michael.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be back, and it's been really fun watching just the growth of the show. So congrats on that.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself first. So tell us who you are, how you got to be an expert in this, and of course, who you work with.
Sure. So I'm Michael Roderick, and a little bit of background on me. I went from being a high school English teacher to a Broadway producer in under 2 years. So a lot of people were very curious as to how. And I ended up
Mhm.
discovering that the thing that got me into most of the rooms that I got into was what people would say about me when I wasn't in the room. They would talk about me when I
Mm.
wasn't in the room in a good way. So the work I do these days is I help subject matter experts who are feeling overwhelmed by their expertise come up with what is that big idea? What is that framework, that model to really kind of move them forward in their thought leadership and help them have access to anyone.
Mm. Which is a podcast you have.
Yes, indeed. Yes, I've had that show for quite some time.
Quite some time. So, guys, check that out. He's going to tell you a little bit about it later. But I have been buzzing since I asked you to come back and I went to your little mini class last week because y'all might not believe this, but outreach makes me want to vomit. There is literally nothing that makes my itty bitty shitty committee yap louder than me reaching out to people to connect and see what kind of win wins we can co create. And I know that this is one of my weaknesses. So I'm delighted to have you back and selfishly glean every ounce of your wisdom to make me better at outreach. so
Love it.
so where should we start? I think maybe we should start with one of my favorite topics, the
Mhm.
psychology at play during outreach and how
Yeah.
our 3 pounds of spicy meatloaf between our ears is just trying to keep us safe. So let's start there.
Yeah. So basically the way I like to think about this is I like to think about it from the standpoint of thinking of a pendulum. And if
Hmm.
you've ever had an experience where somebody did outreach to you and it felt like you were kind of accosted, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it felt like
Yeah.
you came out of nowhere, they were pitching you really hard, you felt awkward and weird, and it just kind of really bothered you. Your
Hmm.
natural tendency when you have a bad experience is to basically say,
Yes.
I don't want to be like that person who just caused that bad experience. So,
Hmm.
if we think about this from a pendulum swing kind of standpoint, now the pendulum is swinging all the way back, and we are
Yes.
basically becoming completely ineffective because we don't want to be like that person
Hmm.
who offended us, bothered us. We don't want to feel pushy or salesy or whatever the scenario is, but we go so far to the other side that we
Hmm.
either don't do it at all or we do it in the most like timid, like barely like tiptoe kind of way.
Mhm. Both of which are not effective. So,
Yeah.
let's say we've pendulumed and
Yeah.
we know we should be doing outreach. We know that that's probably the thing because what do they say? Your network is your net worth. And
Yeah.
personally, I think with all of the content churning out, like there's more content created in 1 month than there was like in the entire 19th century. Like it's
Yeah.
insane. So obviously relationships and that one-to-one connection are so important. So maybe let's try to close that loop a little bit. What
Sure.
is this game-changing way of reaching out that got you in rooms that you never expected to and
Yeah.
offered opportunities that felt completely out of your league, as you said? So our listeners can like really unlock and understand this.
Yeah. So I always thought that access, like connecting with somebody that you always wanted to reach or meet,
Mhm.
came down to the aspect of, okay, you're good at networking or you're good at relationship building, and that's how you get, that's how you get in these doors. But what I
Mhm.
discovered in all of the work that I was doing was that access isn't the problem, interest
Mm.
is. And if we
Ooh.
can make somebody truly interested in what we're saying, if we can get them to the point where they're very, very curious and they're basically saying, I need to respond to this, I need to pay attention
Mhm.
to this, then the access kind of takes care of itself. And
Mm.
most of the time, we don't approach outreach from that standpoint of creating interest. We approach it
Mhm.
from a very straightforward, like, I'm going to tell you kind of everything all in one shot. And I'm going to
Ooh,
hope
yeah.
that you make the decision to come back to me and sort of
Mhm.
follow up with me, which is very, very ineffective.
Yes. I mean, I can see how maybe there's a little scarcity mentality of like if I don't verbally
Yes.
vomit everything, then like you won't possibly know what I'm talking about. And this kind of reminds me, which you might giggle about, but I don't even know how many years ago my mom was in a direct sales company. So naturally I got signed up and they would say like everybody's your customer. And it created so much anxiety for me because I was like, "What if I miss talking to the lady in the grocery store line?" And she was like, "This was gonna change her whole life." And I feel like sometimes we, from a psychological standpoint, when we're outreaching, it's like, it's do or die. It's now or never. If I don't get all of this
Yes.
out, then like I'm missing an opportunity. So how do you create that dance of curiosity and
Yeah.
like open the door without feeling like you're gonna like miss out?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And a lot of the time what it comes down to is, rather than putting all the pressure on the response being you getting whatever it is that you want or whatever it is that you're
Mm,
trying to
mhm,
sell or etc., you shift that and you basically say, my goal is to get the person to start a dialogue with me. And I think
mm.
that's usually the problem, right? We kind of get into this place where we think, I've got to give you my monologue, and then you've got to
Yeah.
decide, was my monologue good enough, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
Whereas if we just create a dialogue where I'm just like, I'm going to ask you kind of an interesting question, or I'm going to share something with you. And all I really want is for you to ask me a question back, respond, or just start the conversation. It takes off a
mhm.
lot of the pressure, right? If we put
Yeah.
and the model or the way that I like to think about this, I call this the tennis novice versus the tennis pro. So
Ooh.
in the tennis novice scenario, if a tennis novice misses a shot, in many
Mhm.
cases the game is over because they're in their own
Right.
head now, right? They're worrying about the
Oh,
next
yeah.
shot that they're going
Mhm.
to miss, and they're just like, they're so obsessed with the outcome, right? Dude, am I going to
Yes.
win the game, right?
Mhm.
Whereas a tennis pro misses a shot and says, okay, Where was I standing? Where was the other person standing? Like,
Mhm.
what can I learn from this? And even if they lose the
Mm.
game, they go back and they watch the game and they think about that whole side of things because they're not obsessed with the product. They're obsessed with the process. So
Mm.
when we make ourselves a student of the process and we basically say everything that I'm doing is really just market research. I'm just learning what's working and
Mhm.
what's not. Now again we take the pressure off of ourselves. The second that we get too obsessed with the product, we're going to get in our own heads. We're going to get concerned. We're going to get
Mhm.
worried. There's like all these things that happen. And there's an exercise that I like to do and I recommend folks do, where I've referred to it. There's this term, this idea of dancing with fear, right? And
Mm.
it's like, what are those fears that you already have? And can you start by addressing those before you even do the outreach? So when I would
Ooh.
talk to people about raising money, I would have this conversation of, if you do this outreach and you ask this person to invest in this project or you ask this person to donate or whatever, what is the absolute worst thing that can happen? Please paint me
Mm.
that picture, right? Like paint me that picture,
Yes.
show me kind of the whole thing. And then what's the absolute best thing that can happen? Paint me that picture, help me kind of see that whole thing. And then can you live with both? And
Mm.
most of the time you can, right? I think that so often, like if you ever seen a horror movie, the
I try not
scariest,
to.
right? Most, yeah, like some folks love them, right? Some folks hate them, right?
Yeah.
But with horror films or anything like high level suspense, most
Mhm.
of the time when you finally see the monster, it's not nearly as scary as all of the stuff that came before you
Uh-huh.
saw the monster.
Yes.
Our
Oh.
fears are the same, right?
Mhm.
If we take the
That
time to be like, how do I articulate this? Like, how do I show it and think about it? We end up realizing a lot of the time, like, actually, that's not that big of a deal. That's not that much of a concern.
Mhm. I love this exercise. I actually took a client through worst case scenario a few weeks ago because, as the biz doctor, I don't do surface level symptoms. Like we have to find the root cause of what the fear was,
Yeah.
that was holding her back. And I think that this is so important and I want to like dig in a little bit deeper because it's it's so interesting. I had a mentor tell me several years ago that we're all making it up. Like your brain,
Hmm.
your 3 pounds of spicy meatloaf is making everything up. It's making contexts and emotions and all that stuff based on your experience, how you were raised, what's happening in the moment. And so the story that we're creating is either serving us or it's sabotaging us.
Yeah.
And in, like, your example, I can tell you in every situation where I was terrified of something bad happen, the stuff that I made up in my brain was so much worse than, like, anything that actually could have happened, and I
Yep.
think it's really a way for our brain to protect ourselves and prepare ourselves because that's really what our brain does, is it's keeping us safe so we don't die.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna grow your business and your influence if you think you're gonna die by outreaching to someone. Like,
Yeah.
that's such an interesting way to think about it with the process. Like, I love that example of the tennis players.
Yeah. Yeah. And when the great thing about looking at something as a process, that gives us the opportunity to break it down into its component parts. And
Mhm.
so often when something isn't working, it's not that the whole thing's not working, it's that there is a
Yes.
component part, right? That we are not
Mhm.
paying attention to or sort of thinking about. So even when I started to think about, the component parts of outreach, one of the things that I landed on was, for most people, in the copywriting world, there's this idea of like addressing an objection in your copy. right? So basically,
Hmm.
like you
Mhm.
think about what is somebody already worried about, and then you use it as your headline, right? Like you just call
Yeah.
out the thing that they're concerned with. In outreach, it is the same thing. Every single person is having some kind of objection, and often it's a fear,
Mhm.
right, that you're already kind of thinking about. So if you open by disarming, right? If you open by
Yeah.
actually just calling out that objection, and I can't tell you the number of times that I would reach out and say, you may not remember me, but we met at XYZ. Or
Mhm.
I know this completely comes out of left field and you probably don't want to hear from a rando talking to you on this platform or whatever, right? Like I just like,
Yeah.
bring it out, and I feel better, but it
Mhm.
disarms the other person because you've already called out like what it is that they're thinking and what it is that they're concerned about. And they're either saying, yeah, that's true, or they're like, oh no, that's not true. You seem like a nice person. Like, and you just don't know until you actually dig into that and use it. And I can't tell you the number of times where that disarming statement
Mhm.
basically lends to somebody responding in a very, very positive way where there have been people who I met like 6 or 7 years ago, and I'll reach out to them and be like,
Mhm.
"Listen, it's been a long time and you probably don't remember me at all, but I've followed your work since, and
Mhm.
yeah, et cetera." And I'll get an email back and they'll be like, "Oh my god, I totally remember you and the conversation that we had at that event
Yeah.
or at that, type of thing." So it is that aspect of when we just start by disarming, when we start by calling out whatever it is that we think the other person's worried about or concerned about and that we're worried about, we're just going to be much, much more comfortable doing the outreach
Mhm.
itself.
I love that. So what comes after disarm?
So now you've got an ask, right? Like
Mhm.
you really
Yeah.
like you have something that you're going to ask. And let's face it, right? Asking is hard. It feels weird. It feels awkward. There's so many things that sort of happen
Mhm.
around asking. But the
Yeah.
most important thing to understand, just from a psychological standpoint, is if we're asking directly, if we're saying to somebody,
Mhm.
"Can you do this for me? Can you give this to me," etc., it is going to cause more anxiety, right? Because our
Mm.
lizard brain is in control in that moment,
Yep.
right? We're freaking out. It's like we're trying to steal somebody's food. We feel awkward. Like it's
Yep.
this crazy, crazy scenario. But direct asking isn't the only way to ask. Like, we don't always
Mm.
have to ask directly. We can also ask indirectly, which is one of my personal favorites, where what you do is you
Mhm.
don't ask somebody to do something for you, you ask them to be a thought partner with you. And you
Mm.
basically say, I see this thing is going on. I'd love your feedback. I'd love your thoughts on this. I'd love to start a conversation about
Mhm.
this particular topic, and you really make it very kind of open of like, I just want to start a dialogue, about this idea or this
Mhm.
concept.
I love this, and of course, the skeptic in me is like, "Does this feel manipulative? Does this feel like we're just, like, trying to, like, weasel our way in? Is this gonna feel gross?" Like,
Yeah.
how do we make sure that, like, if we're not being direct, that it doesn't turn into? Because I think the reason I have a little bit of a, "Ooh," about that is because
Yeah.
I've done the engaging and then gotten slapped in the face with, like, a sales pitch, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Dang." Like, I
Yeah.
remember somebody reached out to me and was, like, super complimentary about the podcast and the award that I won this year, and I, like, genuinely thought they wanted to connect, and then
Yeah.
5 messages later, sure enough, they were just trying to pitch me something, and I
Yeah.
felt so gross, and I don't wanna
Yeah.
be that person. I don't think anybody
Yeah.
wants to be that person. So how can
Yeah.
you have an indirect ask
Yeah.
that doesn't end up feeling like that?
Yeah, you have to know what your intention is, within the sort of world of the outreach, right? So,
Mhm.
are you developing a relationship with this person and interested in getting to know them more? If they are somebody who could be a potential prospect for you or somebody that you're, interested in potentially working with, you got to get to know them
Mhm.
anyway, right? I
Right.
think a lot of the ick comes from the fact that this person tried to get to know you to pitch you, right? As
Yes.
opposed
Yes.
to, if I get to know you and you share with me a challenge or an issue or something that you're going through, and I think I could potentially help, I can very easily say, based on what you're sharing with me, I've got something that could be helpful. But again, I don't want to put any pressure on you about it. So
Mhm.
I'm happy to tell you more if you want to know more, right? And I think that's the thing.
Yes.
It's that finding that, element of like, does this person actually need this particular thing, and really assessing it and figuring it
Mhm.
out. And I think there's a big difference between, are you doing outreach to a prospect where it's like, is this somebody who you're like, I know I could potentially work with this person? Or are you doing outreach to somebody who you admire and who you'd like to just develop a deeper relationship with and you'd like to potentially have as a mentor sort of in the future? Or are you developing a relationship with somebody who might be a partner? Right? And somebody who, like, okay, I think we can do things together. I think we serve a similar audience. And I think in the initial conversation, you can broach those topics, right? Like, and you can just sort of get to that place. So I think that it is a very natural thing what you're talking about, right? Sort of having that experience of like, how do I feel, about the way that this person is, you know, laying the groundwork and then pitch slapping me, right? Like, I think it's a very natural thing to feel that concern. But if
Mhm.
you are coming from this aspect of, I already know kind of what the state of the conversation is and what I'm hoping to sort of create or sort of develop, and I'm only going to make an offer of my services or what I can do if I've assessed that there is actual interest, in it. I think
Mhm.
that's where the difference is.
Mhm. I love that answer. So what I'm hearing, which I think is such a good reminder in today's instant everything world, like, really it comes back to the curiosity. Do you want to get to know this person on a human level, regardless of if there is ever an exchange of anything? And the invitation. Because I agree. I think that in every situation where I've been pitch slapped, which I love that term, it's like I didn't say, yes, I would like to learn more. It was just like forced down my throat. And
Yep.
it felt like I wasn't even part of the conversation. And I have to laugh because I get pitched all the time for medical things, like,
Yeah.
because A, I was in the medical field, but also I'm the biz doctor, and they don't do enough critical thinking to know that I'm not actually doing modalities in a clinic, but I get pitches asking
Yeah.
about different modalities in my clinic all the time. So I think the key here is you can get around all that ick if you're curious, if you really genuinely want to know the human being and you're willing to let them say yes or no. And if they say no, that's fine. That like
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything about you. It just means that in this moment, they're not interested in learning more about how you could help them.
Yeah. And I think for most entrepreneurs, the thing that you have to remember that can be hard sometimes is your offer is not your identity. Like, whatever
Ooh,
you're
say that
selling,
again.
your offer is not your identity. W-
Mhm.
Whatever you're selling, whatever you're putting out there, it is something that you've created, but it is not you. So you are not being
Yes.
rejected. You are not, falling, causing problems for somebody, for somebody else, because you're letting them know that you have something of value, and because they don't agree on the value of that thing. Like, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them and where they
Mhm.
are in their world, on their timeline, in the things that they're doing. And again, I think when you go with more of that aspect of, like, you understand who the person is, and you basically say, like, I got an idea. I've got something that could be useful, and it's up to you. You tell me if you want to talk more about this, or if you see value, if you see value in
Mhm.
this. And if you do, I'm happy to give you more details. I'm happy to talk through, like, what it would look like logistically, but I'm not going to go into all of that effort and go through that entire process if it's actually not interesting to you, because that's a waste of both of our times.
Totally. This makes me think about this back when I was in direct sales.
Mhm.
I say that quietly because, it's not the greatest time, but, um, I I learned a lot. I'm not cut out for that. My one of the leaders used an example, which I think is so relevant here, of a waitress pouring coffee. Like, just picture, like, a really lovely small town diner, and you've got that, like, wonderful woman that's like, "Hey, darling, how you doing? Would you like some coffee?" And she's just going around. Some people are like, "No, I'm good. I'd love an orange juice," or I don't want coffee," or, "Yeah, love, like, fill her up." If somebody says no, she doesn't, like, run in the back of the kitchen and throw her coffee pot down and, like, have a meltdown that somebody rejected her. She's just like, "They didn't want my coffee." And I
Yeah.
think that what you said is so important. Okay, so we've got disarm, ask.
Yes.
Is there a next step?
Yeah. At the very end, I always say, offer something. Like, there's always
Mm,
something you can offer. There's always something you can just suggest that you could potentially help with or do, for that other person. And most of the time, nobody ever does, right? Like, they just either throw
mm.
out the ask, and they never say, like, I've thought about you, and I've thought about a way that I could do something for you. Right. And I think a lot of folks
Mhm.
get caught in that worry of, like, well, what do I do? Right? Like,
Yeah.
what could I potentially offer? And I came up with this concept a while back, called it Rise Up, and it's another acronym, as you know, with all the
Y
fun things that I
Yep.
have.
Mhm.
But basically, Rise Up are all of the different ways that you could potentially provide value to an individual. So the first,
Ooh.
yeah. So the first is the R, which is a referral. So the
Mhm.
offer that you could be making when you're talking to that person is, and based on, maybe you've asked them to connect or talk more, and you might say, based on sort of the work that you're doing, I definitely have clients who I think could be interested in the work that you have, or even based on what you've shared or what I've seen from your world, I know a podcast that I think you'd actually be a great guest on, or whatever it
Oh,
is,
yeah.
right? Some kind of
Mhm.
referral that makes sense, right? That you're basically like, I think I can sort of help, in that regard. The
Mhm.
I is for introduction. And
Mhm.
basically, it's just, based on what I've learned about you, or based on what I've seen about your work, I met somebody else who I think could be really interesting, and I'd love to connect you if that's interesting to you. They've already said that they
Mhm.
like your work, or, et cetera, right?
Mhm.
The S is for strategy. And, you might have seen them write about something or talk about something and say, oh, you know what, I saw you writing, I saw that you posted or commented on looking for the best AI tool. Do you know about, research, or have you seen this article, or whatever it is, right? Some
Yeah.
aspect of, here's some strategy.
Mhm.
The E is really interesting because it's for two things, and it was originally only for one of them. But I had a
Okay.
conversation with somebody that changed this for me. So originally, the E was
Mm.
for events, where I was like, let
Oh.
them know about events, right? Things that are going
Mhm.
on in their area, or things that you think they would like to, check out. But then I was talking to somebody else, And when we went through the whole sort of gamut, this person mentioned that that emotional support was never part of the whole
Oh.
list. So now I always sort of go with
Mm.
the two E's, which are events and emotional support, where maybe you
Yeah.
read that something was going on or something, that they were dealing with, and maybe you can provide some insight or some element of support emotionally that would be useful, that would be helpful in terms of what you read or sort of what you saw, you know, and
I love
that
that.
yeah, it's a nice little thing because how often do you express a concern or talk about something that happened and just never get any support, right? Like never hear from anybody
Mm.
about like
Yeah.
I've been through that, or I've seen that, or I see you in terms of sort of
Mhm.
where you're at. The U is for unknowns. And it's
Mm.
basically any instance of something that they haven't heard of yet. So it could be a new tech tool,
Oh.
it could be a book that they haven't read yet, it could be some other thing that's kind of new, either like cutting edge or bleeding edge that they just don't know is out
Mhm.
there, right? And then the final one, the P is for press, where
Oh, yeah.
people who write for publications, people who have podcasts and different types of projects, etc. So the thing is, if
Mhm.
you use Rise Up at the very end of pretty much any piece of outreach that you do, there's probably something that you can offer, right? Like something very simple
Mhm.
and again, very low key of like, hey, here's this idea. Here's this thought I have of something that could add value to your experience, to your life.
Ooh, I love that. Also, if you are unfamiliar with Michael, I thought I had a lot of frameworks and analogies. This man puts me to shame. Like, I think you have like hundreds at this point. So I love this one. I haven't heard this one before. So would this be a good moment for you to tell us the difference between aspirational and excellent markets?
Yes. And it's
Okay.
actually
Tell us.
really, yeah, really good concept to understand because it ties to everything that we're yeah, ties to everything that we're talking about. So the aspirational market is the market that basically is in essence kind of looking for a savior, right? So if there
Oh.
is an aspirational portion of the market, they basically are trying to find somebody to like solve every problem for them, fix everything for them,
Oh,
right?
that gives me
Um,
anxiety.
Right? It's a really kind of intense thing, but the interesting thing about sort of the context of all this is that
Mhm.
we all are the aspirational market in different areas of our lives because there's
Mm,
something that we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about that we buy just to sort of solve a problem, right? So if I go onto
true.
the, Amazon and I'm basically like I need toilet paper, right? I'm
Yeah.
not spending all of this time like searching for like the absolute, best, like all of the details, all those things. No, I need toilet paper and I need it, now. Is sort of like the
Yes.
basic. So I'm an aspirational buyer when it comes to something like toilet paper,
Mm.
right? So the
Mhm.
aspirational buyer basically thinks in this order. And all aspirational markets think in this particular way. They think spend, then speed, then status. So they start with how much
Mm.
does this cost? How fast can I get it? Or how fast can I get the result? And finally, will it make me like the person I'm buying from? Right? That's
Oh.
how we think. Like we think, oh,
Mhm.
can I have this aspirational goal, that's usually pretty general and pretty broad. Now,
Mhm.
out of that aspirational market, there's a portion of the market that is, in essence, excellence curious, right? Where they have decided that they want to go kind of a little bit deeper, think a little bit more specifically about a product or a service. So now they're moving into that excellence market. And when you're in the excellence market, the way you are looking is that you're not really looking for a savior, you're looking for a guide. You're looking for someone who's going to
Ah.
be alongside of you because you're in the marketing world. We refer to these as batteries included people, right? You know your goals, right? Like you know your goals,
Mhm.
you know the things that you're trying to accomplish, and you have a clear understanding that there are people who know things that you don't. And really what
Yeah.
you want to do is partner with those people on your road to success. So your
Mhm.
order starts at status, then it goes to speed, and then it goes to spend. Because you start with, if I buy this, if I spend the money here, is it going to give me the status that I'm looking to achieve? The thing that I, want more
Mm.
so than anything. My time is more precious than anything. So, how much time do I have to invest in order to have this status, in order to have this experience?
Mhm.
And then finally, if I can get this status in this period of time, what is a
Yeah.
reasonable investment that I would need to make in order to make that happen?
This feels a little bit like the mindset shift of how much is this going to cost me versus how much is this gonna make me?
Yeah. An excellence buyer is always thinking in that vein of what is the result and what price point matches with the result. Because an excellence buyer will actually look at something and you'll think, I'm giving them a deal. And the excellence buyer will be like, I don't believe that's going to give me the result that you're talking about because of the
Mm,
price point that you're sharing.
interesting.
Yeah.
Because the price point is, like, let's say too low to have the perceived value or too high.
Yep.
Like, there it's
Exactly.
like you gotta be in that Goldilocks sweet spot?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because the excellence
Okay.
buyer is naturally skeptical, right? So if
Mm.
I said
Yep.
to somebody, let's say I was an excellence buyer in let's say I was an excellence buyer in the world of well, we'll just go with my collectible sort of side of things, right? Like I love
Yeah.
collectibles. I love popcorn buckets, right? So I buy a
Yes.
lot of collectible popcorn buckets and I'm going to be looking at, is it coming from a cinema? Is
Mhm.
it, does it have the label of the cinema? Like all of those things. And if it's not over $50, I'm probably going to be suspicious of
Right.
of it because I've been to the theaters and I've seen that any most of the time we're anywhere between like 40 to $50 and the more premium ones are in the 70 to 80 range. So if somebody tells me
Mhm.
they've got a collectible bucket and it's $12, I'm really not sure if I should buy that, right? I'm
Yes.
concerned that there's gonna be something wrong or there's gonna be something off. Now, here's how this ties to outreach. We are actually positioning ourselves in our outreach as either aspirational or excellence when we do the
Mm.
outreach. So if I position myself as aspirational when I'm doing outreach, let's say there's somebody I admire or that I've really always wanted to meet, right? And I just kind of write this like massive tome to them about how much
Yep.
I admire them, how many things I've listened to, basically like hitting like stalker level, references and all of those things. And they're like, delete, right? Like
Yep.
it is freaking them out. They're like, are they behind me while they're reading this email? Like it does not work because you're
Right.
aspirational, right? Whereas excellence positioning is when you reach out to somebody and you're like, hey, you know, I recognize that you're successful or powerful or whatever, but I don't really care very much about that. I just care about talking to you like you. I know that we know some of the same people or went to a similar
Mhm.
school or whatnot. And most importantly, if you're too busy right now or if this isn't a good time for you, don't worry about it. But I just wanted to say
Yeah.
this thing. I wanted to share this with you. And when you basically present that aspect of, I'm not concerned whether or not you respond, you get a lot of
Mhm.
response because it communicates that sort of excellence level of positioning versus the aspirational where it's like, I need you to respond. And going back to a lot of what
Mm.
you were
Yeah.
talking about, a lot of the pitches, they drip of, I need you to respond, right? Even sometimes the
Yeah.
the simplest ones where it's like it's literally like two sentences and they're like, would you want to have 35 leads in the next couple of days, or whatever whatever
No.
the offer is, and then they just keep following up to be like, okay, what about 15 leads?
Right.
It's like,
I know. Oh,
yeah,
the art of detachment, I think, is key here. And we're
yes,
about to wrap up. Thanks, guys, for sticking around. And I have three more questions and not that much time left. So
yeah,
I don't want to leave everybody hanging. Do
hmm,
you want to give us like an overview, a very quick overview of the triple threat framework
sure. Yeah,
that
I'll
I've
give
been
you, yeah,
dripping on? Yeah.
super
Okay.
simple. So in the theater world, there's the idea of the triple threat of performers, right? We have an actor,
Mm-hmm.
singer, and a dancer, and they can do all three. But what a
Mm-hmm.
lot of folks don't know is that the order of those three are actually very important to their success. So if you're an actor, singer, dancer, and acting is your top talent, then you should be doing projects that focus on your acting, and then
Mm-hmm.
doing things for singing later, and then really kind of staying away from most dance stuff unless it's like
Yep.
really simple. In the
Mm-hmm.
subject matter expert world, and what I'm finding is probably in pretty much any industry at this point, is another triple threat, which is the scientist, the celebrity, and the magician. And the
Mm-hmm.
scientist loves subject matter, loves breaking things down. They love research. They love doing things in a hyper specific way, but they don't really enjoy any kind of social element. They just kind of love to stay in the lab all the time,
Yeah.
right? But research does not bore them. They love it. They think
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of fun.
Yep.
The celebrity loves the relationship building piece. They love being out in front of people, connecting with people, getting to know people, but they really don't like the science side of it, right? Like they don't want to do the
Right?
research. They don't want to go like really deep into things and spend a lot of time,
Mhm.
thinking about it. They'd rather just be out in the spotlight and be around people. And another really important thing about celebrities is that they make other people feel like celebrities. They have this like
Mhm.
charm to them where you're just like, I can't believe I know them. They make me feel so special, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the magician is 100% wired for novelty. So this is the individual who is always innovating, always thinking differently, always coming up with new and interesting angles for things, but very,
Mhm.
very similar to what I was talking about with the celebrity. Repetition drives them nuts. So even if
Yeah.
something is successful, they will stop doing it because it doesn't scratch the itch of that novelty. Like they could be the most successful
Oh,
in the
yep.
world at whatever it is they're doing, and then they get bored. And they're like, I need to
Mhm.
find sort of something else to do.
Yep.
So if we understand our triple threat, like if we understand what the order is for ourselves, it really highlights a lot of stuff where we start to realize, wow, I'm approaching this in the wrong way, or maybe I don't really need to do marketing in this way, or do my outreach in this context. And it's so important, but a lot of us just we don't know about it or think about it enough.
I wish maybe we'll have you come back on and we could just talk about that, but if this whet your appetite and piques your interest, go find Michael and learn more about your triple threat. And I know, like, we've covered so much. This has been so great. So, one of my last 2 questions.
Sure.
Is there one last nugget or piece of advice or perspective that you wanna make sure that you share with our listeners that you're gonna be like, "Oh, I forgot to share that," or, like, put differently, what is something people don't ask you that you wish they would?
Yeah. So I always go back to this anytime I get a question, similar to this one. And that is the idea that the keys to all the doors you need open are in other people's pockets. And the
Mm.
most important element to understand about that is that also means that you are sitting right now with pockets full of keys. So there are
Ooh, that's
things that
so
you
good.
have, right, that are really valuable to other people, but you don't know about that value. You don't know what the possibilities are until you have those conversations. So I think it's so important for all of us to understand that no matter what industry you're in, no matter where you're at in your career or your business, you're right
Mhm.
now sitting with things that will be valuable to other people. And you just have to have conversations to figure out what those things are.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. That's so good. It's also a little bit like the curse of knowledge where you're like, surely this can't be so valuable because this is so easy for me. So, yeah,
Yep.
I love having those conversations to find the keys. Okay. Last question I ask all my guests.
Yes.
What's a book that every entrepreneur or business owner should read and why?
So I've thought about there's a lot of them that sort of immediately like will sort of to the front, but I'm I'm gonna go with Influence by Robert Cialdini. Um,
Ooh,
and
okay.
and the
I'm going to write
reason
that down.
yeah, and the reason is the sort of depth of inquiry of that book. He basically identifies these weapons of influences as he frames it, and he talks
Mm.
about like I bought this thing and I didn't know why. And then he breaks down like this is why I bought this thing. Like it's
Oh.
so useful in so many ways. I was originally introduced to it when I was still working in Broadway by the Broadway producer Ken Davenport, where it was one of the books that he was always reading and looking at. And when I read it, I was just like, this really is one of the most like fascinating sort of psychological unlocks about anything sales, like anything really persuasion that that you're thinking of.
Oh, that's such a good recommendation. No one has ever recommended that book, so
Oh my
I'm
god.
really excited. We'll put it in the show notes. Don't you worry. You don't need to scurry, pull over to the side of the road and write it down. Okay. So, um, first, thank you again so much for being on the show. Now, I
Of
want
course.
you to tell everybody where they can connect with you, get more of your magic straight to their inboxes or wherever.
Sure.
Tell them where they can go.
Yeah. So if you just go to smallpondenterprises.com, you can sign up. I've got a daily email, a lot of these concepts and these ideas. There's a whole bunch of information on there, and then you can always find me all over the socials on LinkedIn and the Book of Faces, and all of those places as well. You're happy to hear from you, and feel free to say hi.
Beautiful. And again, we'll put all of that in the show notes. And if you're in New York, you can also go and look up ConnectorCon and Relationship Adventure Days, which we didn't get to, but those are
Yes.
very fun. Okay, Michael, that's it. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. I love our
Same.
conversations. Thank you so much for coming on. I have gleaned so many great reframes today, and I love the rise up. I've not heard that framework before. So
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's a blast.
It was a blast. It was. All right. Well, that's it for us today. I'll be waiting for you on the next episode. See you there. Thank you for listening to the Biz Doctor podcast. Now, I like to say that friends don't let friends WebMD your business. So if you're wondering what your next steps could be, here are some options for you. No matter what, head to the show notes or to my website, goldenkeypartnership.com, for some impactful resources to support you getting out from under your business. That's also where you'll find the links to learn more about our services and how we support business owners, just like you, who are ready to make the successful jump from business operator in the trenches to visionary business owner with more freedom and flexibility. All of that info is on our website, so pop on over to learn more or get in touch. goldenkeypartnership.com. Finally, if you love the Biz Doctor podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would share it with your friends and network and give us a 5-star rating or review wherever you listen to your podcast.
An original
from Story Studio Network.